So I wanted to do a little video on my Atari 2600 and compatible consoles, mainly really just to show off the kind of large degree of variety that's out there. I don't even have all of them yet, but also just because whenever someone comes over to my house and they venture down to the basement to see the video game room, usually all they see from Atari is I have one of these 2600 Junior consoles out. Actually, it's Atari Junior, to test games that they come in on, and all the other ones are packed up in storage except for my Vader, but that's under that dust cover over there. So I get confused and have to go through a whole explanation, and all these other consoles are packed up and tucked away nice and safe, but I brought them all out and just kind of want to walk through them. This one is the first one that was issued by Atari in 1977. It was called the Atari VCS, which is Video Computer System CX 2600. Came with combat, I think two joysticks, this AV cord, which is 12 feet long, nice long 12-foot long cord. On the power cord, I think, was about 16 feet long. So you didn't have wireless remotes back then, and remote cords were pretty short. So you're able to actually bring the whole unit, like to you on the couch or wherever you're playing from. But anyway, this is the first one that came out in 1977. Sorry, I hit the button there, but this one is also known as the Sunnyvale edition because it was made in Sunnyvale, California, versus the other ones, which were made in, I think, like Hong Kong and or Taiwan and other such places. It's also known as the Heavy Sixer because it had a lot of RF shielding internally, more so than the one that came out a year later in 1978 called the Light Sixer, which we'll get to in a second. But the other thing you'll sort of notice about this is 6 switches up front, on off, black and white, difficulty left and right, and then game select and game reset. And then the power port and 2 joystick ports are in the back. About a year later, in 1978, Atari released the Light Sixer, so pretty similar to the Heavy Sixer. One thing you'll see is this one. Okay, this one was made in Taiwan, so no longer made in Sunnyvale, California. It's a little lighter, but you're probably not going to pull out a scale to weigh it. But visually, you can tell pretty quickly. If you look at the sides of it, the Light Sixer and all the later editions had skinnier side versus the much fatter side of the Heavy Sixer. And looking at the front, the Heavy Sixer is kind of more U-shaped and rounded, versus the Light Sixer is more angular on the front. So just by looking at it, from the front, you can tell pretty quickly what the difference is. But the Heavy Sixer was 77, then Light Sixer came out in 78, and then over here I've actually got a Sears Video Arcade. So it says Video Arcade. Telegames was the Sears label. At some point, I think actually when Atari released Pong, Sears bought rights to reissue the games, the consoles, controllers under the Sears Telegames label and sell exclusively in Sears stores. So they made these games, and you can tell pretty quickly that it's a little different because it's got the silver versus black on the face. It says Telegames, and then the wood grain is more of a, I don't know, burled whatever with Video Arcade versus the Atari logo, but otherwise it's functionally the same. This one's made in Taiwan, same hardware, identical inside. And this one is the Light Sixer version. I believe that also, actually, for the Heavy Sixer version, there's a Telegames Heavy Sixer, but I don't have that yet in my console collection. Then in 1980, Atari released the CX2600A, which is also kind of a four-switch version. People call it a four-switch or four-switch Woody. I think on eBay I've also seen it referred to as a launch edition, though I'm not sure why, because it sort of came in the middle. It wasn't like, you know, the first one. It was the first one with 4 switches though, and that's really the difference. To save money on production, Atari took the left and right difficulty switches from the front and moved them up here, so it's these little toggle switches. So technically it's same number of switches, but they moved it to the back. So, you know, this is called a 4-switcher, even though it does have switches on the back, versus the 6-switcher. It's actually a channel select 2-3 switches on this one, also on the back, for channel 2 or channel 3. I think this one, some of these actually have a switch in here that I don't have a flashlight, it's hard to see. Some of them actually have the hole but no actual switch available. Because really back in the day when you had to hook up to your you know, old school TV with the bunny ear RF modulator connection and switch between channel 2 or 3, some TVs just seem to work better with channel 2 and some work better with channel 3. Again, this is the sort of 4-switch standard Woody that a lot of people are familiar with, and similarly Sears came out with their 4-switch version once, you know, Atari started making these, you know, since Sears again was identical hardware and just, you know, slapped their name on it. You find these telegames, video arcade systems, and 4 switches as well. The last sort of series of the 4-switch Atari is the Vader console, which again I have the cool dust cover. This is the one I usually keep on top of my sort of game shelf over there to play when I'm actually want to play on the big TV. But came out in 1982, so it's pretty much functionally identical to the 4-switch Woody from 1980, except it's just all black. And I mean, that's really the only difference. People call it the Vader console because it's black like Darth Vader. Official name was actually the Atari 2600, so this is the first one that was called 2600, made in Taiwan. Remember, the previous ones were the CX2600, CX2600A, so this is actually the first Atari 2600. Moving along, actually did want to call out this guy right here. This is a Gemini, which is Coleco video game system, so made for Atari games. Coleco, you'll see it right there. So they had the ColecoVision, which played ColecoVision games, but also came out with this at some point, I think in 1982-ish or something. I think they ended up in a lawsuit with Atari, but then, you know, kind of discontinued production just because they weren't selling that well. Anyway, this one is a little more interesting because it's also in French. I got it from Canada, I believe. So it's got English and French, and you can see color, couloir, selection, game select, remise au jeu, which apparently means reset. I guess on and off are not the same in French, but they are the same here. But just another interesting little thing. You'll see Gemini, made in Taiwan. So I wanted to move to this next one. This is a Sears Video Arcade 2, which was released, I believe, in 1983. It was the last Sears branded Atari console, I think, that came out. This one I got doesn't have the little faceplate, but it would say, I think, Video Arcade 2 right here, if I had it. But the back you can see Sears, Atari, Main USA. This one actually has, you know, black and white color switch on the bottom here, channel switch on the bottom. Otherwise, though, it's got 4 ports, so you can play a cool game of Warlords or something like that with 4 people, instead of having to have an extra switcher. And then you'll see the console for people who are familiar with the Atari 7800. It's actually functionally pretty similar. The case is almost identical in shape. If you look at the bottom, it's kind of the same mold, though it's slightly redesigned for the 7800. This was actually based off of the Atari 2800, which was released in Japan right around the same time. Didn't sell very well, so not many of them out there, but whoever the designer was of the 7800 came along later in, I believe, 1986 and used the same, or 85, whenever the 7800 came out, used the same sort of mold as the basis of the design for the console. Back to Atari, though. After the video game crash, and Atari had released the 5200 and we're kind of getting into the 7800, they also reissued the Atari 2600 this time as the 2600 Junior, Atari Junior. Played the same games, but the case is a lot smaller. Switches are a lot cheaper, so it was a lot cheaper to produce. I think they sold it for like $50, so it was cheaper to sell, cheaper to produce. These two I've got here are essentially, it's functionally again the same inside. The only difference is the little rainbow guy here. This is the first edition that came out, I believe, in 1986 or so. This is known as the short rainbow. And then shortly thereafter, they released the kind of wide or long rainbow version. You'll probably find more of these out there than the short version. But again, this was their sort of attempt to get more of these out there, at a cheap price for people who still want to play these games, even though you had the 7800, the 5200, you had systems like the NES coming out as well. But Atari managed to hang on for another 5 or 6, 7 years after this with the 2600 games. So that's this one. Still made in Taiwan. This one is essentially the same. The big difference on this one is it's PAL, made in China. Interesting. But PAL, so this was my European version. So this is what I used to play my PAL games. I have a few more things that came out more recently. The 2600 Plus was released last, I think, October, September-ish of 2023. So Atari re-released this console. Again, it looks like the standard 4-switch Woody, although it's significantly smaller. Where to go? Here it is. Just for size reference, you'll see it's about 20% smaller. When you put them side by side, you can see the difference. But it's got 4 switches, difficulty on the back, channel switch, controllers. Main difference is this one outputs HDMI, and it's got more modern power input, and then this is backwards compatible with 7800. So it plays 2600 and 7800 cards, or you could use more modern sort of digital versions. But this is the 2600 Plus, and there are other companies out there that in the interim between the Atari Junior in 1986 or so and now released systems that enable you to play these retro games. This one is the Hyperkin Retron I had picked up, so it's more of a digital system, HDMI out. Also actually has a memory card, so you could play games off of here. but it does have the sort of game port slot to play original carts as well. Last thing I had here is just another interesting oddity. This is the ColecoVision expansion module 1. So right around the same time that they were making their Gemini console, ColecoVision also made this expansion module 1 that actually plugs into a ColecoVision console and then lets you play Atari 2600 games on the ColecoVision console. And it adds the additional functionality of black and white when people actually had black and white TVs back in the day, left and right difficulty, and then game select and reset. So it's kind of like a little mini Atari, but lets you play Atari games on your ColecoVision console. Anyway, that's it for my console collection. Hope you enjoyed, and come back for more videos.